Alex, one thing I just want to assure you of is that, as far as I'm concerned, we have a solicitor-client relationship right now, so our discussions are confidential, and I won't be talking about this, the information that you give me, with anybody else without your permission. And do you have any questions around that?
Not really. I mean, that's what I assumed. I assumed that I come here and I can tell you whatever I want. But I suppose if I tell you something, whatever I tell you and you know, you can't pretend you don't know either, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Not that there's anything, but just so that I know that. Okay.
Right.
No, that's all. No, I understand that.
I'm not sure I understand what you
Oh,
meant.
well, I'm just saying that if, I tell you something that's harmful to my case, once I've told it to you, then I've told you, right? And you can't go around, you can't write a letter saying, denying what I've told you.
Well, first of all, I think it's important for you to tell me everything and be truthful about what's going on,
Yeah.
what's happened, and that's why we have solicitor-client privilege, so you can discuss these things openly.
Yeah.
Because I can't advise you properly if there's information that you're not disclosing.
All right.
It's not unusual for somebody to feel like it's difficult for them to say something when it may not be a favorable type of event, but it's helpful to me to understand what's happened so that I can best advise you. And we can look at information that you might disclose which may not be helpful. We'll just look at that as a disadvantage. But we can also discuss how can we manage that in a way that's going to be most productive for you.
Okay, I understand.
All right.
Okay, great.
So Alex, today we have an hour, and I'd like to spend the hour getting some preliminary information about what this is about.
Sure.
And after that, we'll get into more detail. And then finally, at the conclusion of the day, we'll decide what we need to do to go forward. And usually these meetings take, we'll have to get together, have a second meeting at some point in time. So try to arrange that as near as possible to today, because I know you're probably most anxious about this. And I expect the fact that you're here means that you haven't been able to work this out yourself. So we're going to try to do what we can to help you. And I think the goal we'll have is to come up with some options for you. So you can choose among those, and we'll review the pros and cons of these options at some point. But today we'll just start. Maybe we can get some preliminary information. And I'd like to have a bit of a brief overview of what this is about. It doesn't have to be too detailed, because we are going to get into more detail later. I'd like to know a little bit about what you hope to achieve, what your objectives are, and what kind of solutions that you've thought about. So why don't you start and just give me kind of a brief description of why you're here.
I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly pissed off. I'm good at what I do. I'm a software developer. Anyway, I had a bunch of great ideas. Worked for IBM. It was really boring because I was working for other people. So for me, it was really important that I strike out on my own and use some of my own ideas and get really creative. So that's what I did, and I started up by myself in my basement. And over a period of time, I was able to build up this great team of developers, and we created some really, really great product. For personal reasons, I ended up deciding to sell the company so that I wouldn't have quite so much stress and I could focus on my home life a little bit better. And so there were these people on the West Coast that I had dealt with in sales by the name of Dutton, and they ran a company out there. And that company, I discussed with them the possibility that I might be looking at trying to lessen my load a little bit, and they seemed to be very, very interested in the company. So we started talking about what we could do about that, and in the end result, they came up with an offer to buy my company. But still, I didn't want to stop working. I mean, I'm a young guy, and I wanted to continue for years to come, but I thought it would be great because they could take care of the admin, and they could take care of the sales, and I could focus on some business development and also be in charge of my development team. So they made me an offer, and the deal closed in December of 2009. December 2008. And the deal was for $3 million, $1 million each time. and the deal was to result in my becoming vice president of the company, with certain responsibility for business development and certain responsibility for software development.
Okay.
So anyway, to make a long story short, again for personal reasons, I had to take some time off in the summer, and I got back, and basically they all of a sudden weren't consulting me. I'm a vice president. They weren't consulting me in anything. And they started to try to give direct instructions to my development team without telling me.
Okay.
And then they moved me into a smaller office. And I just kind of felt left out in the cold. And I don't have anything to do. So I really feel, I really feel as though I've been shutted off into that corner. I was really pissed off about that, so I had a meeting with the husband. It's a husband and wife team that bought the company that now own my company and theirs. And I had a meeting with them, and I got really angry because I was really angry that I was, I felt demoted. And he was very critical of me, and unfairly, I think, in that meeting. Very, very critical. Mm-hmm. And basically suggested I should start looking for another job. That he said that they weren't going to pay me any more money on what they owe me. They still owe me one payment, hell of a lot of money. And that they were through with me. So I didn't know what to do. So that's why I'm here.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you're very confused about what their motivation is and why these things have happened, because you left for a period of time and then you returned and things have changed.
Yeah, my wife died, and that's why I had to take some time off.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And that actually, she was sick at the time that I decided to sell the company, and they knew that. I mean, they knew that that was one of the motivations why I had to do this. So that makes me mad.
Had your wife been ill for quite some time?
Yeah, she got ill in 2007. And so I was struggling trying to help her, trying to help raise the kids, mm-hmm. as well as trying to run the company. And I found ultimately I couldn't do it all.
No.
So I went on like that for about close to a year before I finally made contact with the Duttons about possibly selling the company.
All right. So there are all kinds of motivations behind your selling and trying to deal with what's going on with your wife.
Yeah.
I can appreciate how difficult that is. Have you thought about what you hope to achieve, or what you are looking for, what your objective is at this point?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm confused because I really thought I had a deal, and I really thought I'm good at what I do, and they treated me like I was an asset of the company, and my future was set there. I still love software development, and I like doing the business development stuff. Mm-hmm. So I would like to continue doing that. But I don't think I can work with the Duttons anymore. I mean, I don't know after what he's told me. I don't think they want to work with me either. But I love the people I work with. You know, the development team I have, they're great. So I want to be able to, and I guess I need to do that. And I have, God knows, I still have lots of ideas. So I have no problem with starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still have to be a dad, but I don't need to be concerned about taking care of my wife because she's not here anymore.
How many children do you have?
2.
What ages?
14 and 12.
Okay, so they're relatively young.
Yeah.
And, well, what I'm hearing is that your work is important to you, and the business is important to you, but it's your relationship with the Duttons that's really the major concern right now, and it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty around that for you.
Yeah, I mean, to give you the total picture, it's fair to say that after I sold the company and when I was still working, after I sold the company when I was doing my job, I wasn't all there. My wife was very sick. Mm-hmm. And so even when I was at the office, it was hard for me to do a lot of what I had to do. Some of the business development stuff didn't get done the way it should have, and I wasn't doing as good a job mm-hmm. of managing the developers in the way that I should have.
All right. But the objective for you is to be able to continue to do the work that you've been doing.
I love doing what I do.
And is it an objective of yours to try to at least have some communication with the Duttons to better understand how?
I don't know how I can talk to them now. Frankly, I'm still incredibly pissed off.
Yeah.
And because I feel what they basically said is they've lost confidence in me, and I don't see how the hell I'm going to get it back. It would be humiliating for me to go back now and say, oh gosh, yeah, isn't everything fine? Mm-hmm. Because they knew. I mean, they knew what I was going through, and they had obviously no patience for that whatsoever.
Okay.
And so they're very, very harsh on me, and I resent that. So I don't know that I could work for it. The other thing is, they still owe me money on that sale.
So that would be another objective, is to recover the money?
Yeah. I'm going to get every frigging penny that I deserve.
Anything else that you can think of that you want to accomplish?
Well, I guess I'm concerned about my reputation. I'm concerned about what they've said about me and how that affects, because, I mean, the business community is not that big. Mm-hmm. And I want to know that my reputation is intact.
All right, so...
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I think part of this is on just information. Who have they been talking to, and who else have they discussed?
I don't know. I mean, certainly people within the company know something's going on, because I've been moved, and now there's reporting structure is different, and I'm kind of left out in the cold. So they clearly understand, and so there's my reputation with them, and of course, because it's a small world, they know no other people in the software community, so that becomes a problem. Mm-hmm. And of course, you know, they talk to customers, and I've dealt with some customers, and all of a sudden they're not dealing with me anymore, and I don't know what the Duttons are saying.
Okay.
I have no idea. The other thing that worries me is that, well, I signed a whole bunch of stuff when I sold the company. And I remember there was something that I signed that talked about not being able, if I left the company, I couldn't do what I'm doing now.
Okay, so non-competition.
Yeah, that's what you call it.
Yeah.
But that frigging thing can't be binding, can it?
Well, that's one of your concerns then, is whether this is a binding document and whether that clause is binding. So I take it the concern is, can you work?
Well, I've always understood they can't stop me from working and doing what I know how to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a concern we're going to address for you.
So are you saying that's something to worry about?
No, I think it's something that we need to look at. And what I want to do is really identify what you're concerned about and what your objectives are. And what I'm hearing right now is that that clause is a major concern for you, because what you want to be able to do is work. And maybe the question is, how are you going to be able to work doing what you want to do? Because right now, I think, as I hear it, your concern is about your relationship with the Duttons. You don't understand why they've done what they've done. You're angry about it. You're upset about it.
I'm angry and upset. Do I understand why they've done it? I understand why they've done it. I think it's grossly unfair and high-handed, and I think they need to pay for it. So, do I care about my relationship with them? At this point, probably not. I want to make sure they don't say bad things about me, but I don't know that I can work. Like, for me to go back and try to work for them would be humiliating. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to know that I can move on and do what I love to do without them. Well, and I'll show them.
Right. So right now, because of that anger, you've thought about some ideas. First thing I think I understand that really what is important to you is be able to do your work.
Yes.
And your reputation in the community that you have worked in is extremely important, especially with the employees and other people you would have had a business relationship with. So that's important to protect.
Yes.
And you've got other commitments. You've got children that you're responsible for, and you've just had a major loss in your life. So these are things that all play a part of what's happening here. Have you thought about solutions to the...
Well, there's two things. I mean, one is the sale of the business. I want my money. And they can afford it. You know, the business was my business, had great product. There were good sales. And the Duttons are wealthy people. They freaking well got the money to pay me. And so I want to get, so that's one thing I want. Secondly, I'm going to be out of a job at some point. And once that happens, the income they're paying me is gone. And I mean, you know, yes, the deal was for $3 million, but I need to retire at some point in my life, and that was going to be my nest egg. I still need to earn a living.
Right.
And it's going to take me a while to build up the necessary product to be able to sell and start to create an income from a new business. So I want to get paid severance for whatever time
And
it's going to take me to.
Have they continued to pay you since?
Oh, they're paying me now, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, well, in fact, I'm going in every day, although I have nothing to do. So, I mean,
right.
that's only, I mean, he's told me, Dutton told me when we fought that to start looking for another job.
Okay. All right. Anything else you can think of in terms of concerns that you might have?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of talking about the kind of people the Duttons are, one of the things he mentioned in the meeting when we fought was that he was having trouble, huge trouble collecting some of the accounts receivable. So when I sold the business, it was an active business. So there was product, and there was, you know, inventory stuff like, you know, equipment and all that stuff, and there were people, but it was an active business, so I had payables and I had a lot of receivables, and there was some issues with some of the receivables because I sold right in the just when there were economic problems here, and I was concerned about some of the accounts receivable. Mm-hmm. And I told the Duttons that. I wrote them and I said, when we were negotiating, I said, the one thing I'm not sure about is the receivables. I said, I will collect some of them, but the clients that we have are suffering because of the recession, and it's going to take a while for the money to come in. So when I was having the fight with Dutton, he raised the issue of the accounts receivable. And he said that they've been having a nightmare collecting them. And because I had guaranteed the accounts receivable, it was my responsibility. Well, I hit the friggin' roof. Because I never guaranteed those receivables when I was negotiating with them. I mean, we signed the agreement between us, and I mean, I looked at it. I mean, as you know, I had other things in my mind, so for me it was just getting rid of it. So I didn't really look all that carefully in the agreement. Well, he shows me this clause that says I'm guaranteeing the receivables in the agreement. So I didn't even know that was there, but he freaking well knew that I wasn't guaranteeing the receivables, that I was concerned about them. So he's going to try to use that and try to say he doesn't owe me that last payment.
Okay. But from your understanding, the guarantee is a new item for you. You didn't know that was in the agreement.
I didn't know that was in the agreement.
And in addition, Dutton didn't expect it to be in the agreement.
Well, Dutton wrote the agreement.
Okay.
So when I wrote that letter to him and when we were talking, it was clear from my perspective that you weren't there. He then puts in this guarantee in the agreement that he drafted without pointing it out to me or telling me it was there. Okay. So I had no reason to believe it was there.
Okay.
Yes, I signed it, but I mean, I was not in great shape at that point.
All right. Well, we may go into some more detail on that in a few minutes, because that's going to be an important point.
Okay.
So I know your objectives, but in terms of how we resolve it, have you thought about it?
I need to keep my reputation intact. I want to be able to leave where I am, take my development team with me, start working from scratch, doing new ideas and exactly what I want to do. I want to get paid everything that I'm owed under that agreement of purchase and sale, and I want to get severance. And I want to get a letter from them saying it's been nice knowing me and I was great at what I did when I was there. That's what I want.
In terms of your reputation, what would you be looking for?
I'd be happy with a letter from them saying that, and the way in which I leave is important as well.
Okay, so a letter indicating that they're not going to talk negatively about you or
well, actually a letter saying how good I was at what I did.
Oh, a type of reference letter.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah,
Okay.
but More importantly than that, like for the company itself, like I want the employees to know that I want them to believe it's my decision to leave. And I want them to believe that the Duttons are sorry to see me go, but that it's my decision because I need to run my own show.
Okay. So Alex, that's very helpful to me. And really what I'm hearing is that you've had a business that you've established yourself at a time that was most difficult. And right now, as a consequence of your wife's illness and other circumstances, you decided to sell to the Duttons. And something's happened that's changed the arrangement. And you've gone away for a period of time to deal with your wife, and you return and everything has changed. You're feeling isolated. They're accusing you of things that you really don't understand. And you've got some very important concerns about your reputation, not only with respect to the Duttons, but all the other people that you've worked with. You're also concerned about the money that's owed to you and ensuring...
Just to be clear, they're paying me my salary right now.
Yes, I understand that, but you...
But the money for the business, that's right, they still owe me the $1 million.
They owe you $1 million. Plus, you have got a concern about ongoing income.
Yes.
And what's going to happen in your relationship. So you want to be able to continue to work and do the work that's most important to you.
Yes.
And you've got children that you need to think about as well. So you've thought about a resolution, one of which is to ensure that they give you a letter of some sort that sets out how much they think about you, and that the decision to leave, if you're going to leave, is really your decision.
Do you know what I want? I want a party. I want them to have a party of celebration for my time there. That's what I want. So it's very clear to them they've enjoyed having me there, and now it's time for me to move on, to go back to do my own thing, because I'm an entrepreneur and I don't like working for other people. That's what I want.
And a party would give the atmosphere that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Okay.
With their full support and their being there to thank me for their time there.
Okay.
For my time there.
All right. Great. Anything else that you can think of at this point?
No, I mean, I could ask for an apology, but I just don't think, I don't care. I don't care if I ever see them again, frankly, once this is over with.
All right.
I just want to get out and get on.
All right. I'll note it, though. I'll just park it as a thought. All right. What I'd like to do now is kind of move to getting some more detail around the situation. And what's helpful is if we kind of establish a timeline when things first started, and that gives me a bit of a fuller picture of how events evolved. So, and then and the timeline is just basically the events that happened in chronological sequence, and then we'll take a look at those events in more detail in the latter part of the interview. So what I'd like, if you could for me, is to establish the first thing that happened with respect to the situation.
My wife getting diagnosed.
And when did that happen?
January about, I should know like it was yesterday, about a little over 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
2 years and 9 months.
What next happened?
Company was doing really well, but we were going back and forth to doctor's appointments, you know, this chemotherapy and the effects of that, and of course the kids didn't understand and we had to tell them, and then I was trying to deal with their grief, and I was trying to run a business. And things were growing. I mean, the business was doing really well. It was so weird to have the business doing well and things at home being so bad. And so it went on like that probably, well actually it continued to go on like that for almost a year before I really decided that I needed to do something to change. So it was really the start, it was really about 1.5 years ago. And I dealt with the Duttons before in a couple of deals. They bought some of my product, and I liked them as people, and we seemed to get along really well, and so I thought, okay, well this is, you know, if I began to think I need to do something, and the idea of selling the company might give me a little bit of security, but also would allow me to offload some of the stress that I had. So we started talking, I guess, so it'd be about a year and a half ago we started to talk.
So
And
So your wife was diagnosed 2.5 years ago, and then you spent a year kind of just trying to manage the situation.
yeah,
And then you decide, you think maybe one of the options is to sell.
yeah.
So you knew the Duttons from, do I understand that relationship developed through your business?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So you have started to have discussions with them.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next thing that happened?
Well, my wife went through a period of remission when I thought things were going to be okay for probably about 3 or 4 months, and then she started to get sick again, and I started to have a lot more problems trying to manage. So then I picked up the phone and I called the Duttons and say, look, we're getting along well. And they made a couple of comments about, we think that your organization would fit really well within ours, and if ever it's something you thought of doing. And they also knew the struggles I was having at home. So I picked up the phone and I called them and I said, okay, I want to talk.
Okay.
And so we talked probably, they wanted to come and they wanted to check out what my there's this whole, I hate lawyers, okay? So I said, I don't want any lawyers involved in this, but I said, let's just try to do this. So they came up with, I was concerned, because they're clients of mine, I wanted to make sure that they didn't tell anybody else. So we signed what we call in the business an NDA, or a non-disclosure agreement, so they could look at my stuff and not tell anybody. So we signed that. I don't remember when it was. It was sometime about a little over a year ago, and they checked everything out and they asked me questions, and I showed them some financial information. And then finally, about a year ago, they came up with a letter of intent. And then we actually signed the deal about, I guess, in October, and then we closed in December. So what's that, about 9 months ago?
So you signed the deal, that was the agreement to purchase?
Yeah, in October.
And then you closed in December?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then...
so if I just go back to the letter of the non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
Between the time you signed that agreement and the letter of intent,
yeah.
what took place within that time?
Well, a lot of stuff at home, and trying to struggle to work stuff. And I was kind of half at home and half at work, and actually it took them a while because I was having trouble getting stuff to them, and so it took a lot longer, and it was hard, right? Because you're selling your own business. So I was kind of delaying things because I just didn't know what was happening at home. I didn't know what was happening at work, and I just thought I would. I didn't want to rush it.
Okay.
So I took my time, did what I could with them, and tried to run the business and tried to take care of my wife at home.
And in that period of time, was there information exchanged about the
business? Yeah, there was. They want to understand the products more detailed, the development process. They were concerned whether or not there was any breach of other patents or any kind of copyright issues, and they wanted to check my clients. They wanted to understand who I was selling to. I was selling to some of their competitors, in fact, so that was going to be a problem if they bought the company. And they wanted to understand kind of how the business was growing, what my business model was, how I operated the software team, the developing team, and how I dealt with my clients and all that. Right. So all of that. So yes. So they were looking at financial information. They were looking at some client lists. They were looking at details of the people that I had employed. They were understanding the product that I had. All of that was happening at that time. Right. But it took a while.
All right. So then the next thing was the letter of intent, and following that was the signing of the agreement.
Yeah, and I remember I told you that thing about the accounts receivable.
Right.
Before the letter of intent, when we were doing that non-disclosure, I remember writing them and I was saying, I'm worried about some of these receivables. Like I don't know. Like first of all, I said I don't have the time to chase people for money that they owe me because I'm too busy with other stuff. And secondly, some of the clients, I don't know if they'll pay.
And that was prior to the letter of
That's
intent?
part of the letter of intent.
Okay,
Because I wanted them to know that when they set the price.
all right. So anything else happened as a consequence of your sending that letter?
Not really. Just
All right.
negotiations continued now.
Okay. So we may get into that in a bit more detail later. So we have the letter of intent, and then you sign the agreement.
Yeah.
I understand that you sent a letter relating to the receivables to the Duttons,
Yes.
and there was some other discussion that went on.
Lots of other discussions.
So we'll get into that a bit more at a later time. But from the time that the letter of intent was signed until the actual agreement was signed in October, what took place?
Sorry, between the letter of intent and the agreement being signed.
That's correct.
There's some essential parts of the deal. The letter of intent was kind of, this is how much, what I wanted to know is how much they were prepared to pay. And the letter of intent told me how much they were prepared to pay. But
Okay.
we had to talk about what we were going to do with the employees. We had to negotiate the terms of my work for them, where I was going to work, what my responsibilities were going to be.
All right.
So that was a lot of that discussion. And then we had to talk about some transitional things about how the business was going to operate before closing, because there were some changes we had to make in the context of doing completing the deal with them.
All right, so a lot of the detail had to be worked
Yeah.
out in that period. Okay. Then you sign in October, and you close the deal in December.
Yeah.
What took place between the signing of the agreement and the closing?
Well, they had a lawyer. I told them that I wasn't going to go to a lawyer. I didn't have the time. And as I told you, I hate lawyers. So I said, you take care of it, and I'll trust you. It's all going to be fine. So their lawyer did whatever the hell lawyers do to get stuff ready. And so it took them a while to get documents, and I had some leases, and I had some loans, and they wanted to know details of the leases and details of the loans, and I had a lease, and we had to go get the consent of the landlord for the lease. So all of that stuff happened between October and closing in December.
All right. So let's go on then from there in December. What happened after the closing?
Well, it's funny, you do all that work and then all of a sudden you're going to work the next day and it's the same as it was the day before, except I was working for a different company. I was still in charge of my developers and I was still doing some business development. But for me, what was great was I didn't have to worry about the administration so much anymore. So I didn't have to worry about payroll. I didn't have to worry about HR. I didn't have to worry about legal stuff. And I could just I could focus on my development team and some client development. And that was initially the case for probably the first 3 or 4 months. It was exactly what I wanted, and then my wife got really sick.
Okay. Okay, and what happened then when your wife became ill?
Well, I don't know if you've ever been through it, but it's really hard because you want to be around 24 hours a day and you can't. But you can't do anything because you're trying to look after the kids and you're trying to be up for them and you're trying to be up for your wife and then you're trying to be up at work and something has to give. So, and I just didn't have the energy. So I had trouble going into the office and I didn't want to talk to anybody because I didn't have any energy to do it. So there were some clients that we could have had that we probably didn't have because I didn't return some calls. And I have to say that I wasn't brimming over with fresh ideas for the development team either. I didn't have any energy. I didn't have any creativity. I was just totally focused on trying to make sure the kids were okay and trying to take care of my wife. So I was going into the office. Sometimes I was late. Sometimes I'd leave early. The odd day I wouldn't go in at all. But I was, and that was like starting, I don't know, maybe beginning of March. And then by the end of June, it was clear my wife was going to die, and so I had to take time off.
Okay. So the end of June, you took time off at that point, and I suppose you really didn't know what to expect. And what happened then?
well, I had really, really good support staff, because I had an assistant, and then I had a lead developer, and so I just told them I wouldn't be in. And so they said, don't worry, we'll cover for you. Okay. And so they continued, and I checked in. I'd make the odd phone call, make sure things were okay. There was stuff happening they didn't tell me about, in terms of clients that wanted to talk to me that I wasn't there for. It's true.
But your main focus at that point was your wife.
Was taking care of my wife and my kids, yeah. And the kids were off, and it was just horrible.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about it. But anyway, she died. Well, she died the 15th of July, and then I was off for 3 weeks, dealing with the funeral and trying to help the kids. I came back to work probably, I guess it was like about a month ago, around the, second week of August, something like that. I don't really remember.
Okay.
And that's when the shit hit the fan.
So what happened when you returned?
Well, I walk in, and I could tell that the staff was feeling really badly. Like a couple of them couldn't look at me in the eye, and my assistant was not there. And I was told that she was moved to another part of the building that we were in. And the development team were working on stuff, but it wasn't anything that I talked to them about. So somebody else, I assume the Duttons, had come in and started talking to my development team. So I first felt really badly, because I thought, okay, I've not been able to do what I was supposed to do. But then I got really angry, because I thought, this is not right, because they knew this might happen, and they knew this was going to be a problem. So then I started to get angry, and I didn't have anything to do. I didn't have an assistant. The developing team is working on something I don't even know about, and I tried calling a couple of clients, and they're clearly dealing with other people in the company. So all of a sudden, there's nothing for me to do, and so I called Dutton, and I said, I got to see you. And that's when we had the big shouting match.
Okay. And what happened after that?
Well, he basically said, he dumped it all on me. You've let the company down. You've not followed through in these business opportunities, and development team doesn't know what the hell to do because you're never there. And you clearly can't perform your job, and you're not going to have a job here much longer, so you better start looking. And by the way, we're not paying any more money than the purchase price, because the company's not what we thought it was.
So Alex, you returned to work, and I think you indicated it was that time that you found everything had changed, and you then asked for a meeting with Mr. Dutton?
Yes.
All right. And that's when you had the confrontation and a lot of
accusations. That's when he said, you've let us down, you're not doing your job, and therefore you better start looking for work elsewhere, because you ain't going to be around here much longer. And by the way, we're not paying you any more money, because the business isn't what we thought it was, and we can't collect your receivables. So then I got really angry, because I said, you knew about my wife, you knew that this was going to be a problem, you did the deal with me. Do you have any compassion? And what's this about the receivables? I wrote you and I told you. And then he pulls out the agreement, and he points to this clause that I told you about, the one that says I'm guaranteeing the receivables.
Right.
And I said, that was not the deal I wrote you. And he said, what matters is what's in the agreement, and this is what I bought. This is what I bought. Your guarantee on these receivables. So I'm not paying you. And I lost it, and I got really angry. And he was angry back, and we yelled at each other, and I stormed out. And I guess for I mean, I've been going back to work every day, but there's nothing for me to do.
No. How long ago was that?
That was about 3 weeks ago.
Okay. And what happened after that?
Not much. I've been basically staring at the wall because I have nothing to do. I mean, the clients are not calling me. I don't have any authority to do any client development. My development team, I'm doing a little bit with them. They come and ask me questions and I give suggestions, but it's clear that they can only go so far. That they're taking orders from somebody else. I assume that's Dutton, so I don't have that much to do there, and it becomes humiliating to go in, and I just don't think that's right.
No. And you're just fresh from coming back from your period away and your wife passing away, so I'm sure it's not only are you going through a grieving process, but now you're trying to deal with a changed situation at work that you don't understand.
To give myself credit, like it was a long haul at home, and I miss her, but I feel I mean I have all this energy. Like I feel I need to get back. I don't want to sit around and feel sorry for myself for the next 20 years. I want to be able to get back in the driver's seat and start working.
Keep yourself busy.
Yeah, but I can't do it in this kind of environment. I just can't.
All right, that's extremely helpful to me to sort of have that overview of how things developed. But there are a couple of things I'd like to have more information about,
Okay.
and I wonder if we could just take some time to develop that a bit. And what I'm particularly interested in is the agreement and how that developed. And so I think as I understand it, you had the letter of intent that was developed, which would have been very general in nature. And then a lot of discussion would have taken place and information exchanged up to the point where the agreement was signed.
Yes.
And you talked about the fact that you decided you didn't want to have a lawyer, but you would depend on their lawyer. So what I'd like
Actually, I depended on the Duttons. If they got a lawyer to help them do stuff, and I didn't care what they did, I just wanted to sign an agreement and get the deal done. I didn't go to a lawyer. No, as I say, I don't like them. I didn't have the time, and I trusted these people, and I figured it would be okay.
All right. So what I'd like to do is focus on that period of time, from the letter of intent to the agreement. What can you tell me about that?
Well, the Duttons kept on calling me and asking me for information. They wanted copies of documents, like the lease, the loans with the bank. I had an IT contract for software support. They wanted to see that. They wanted to see all the employment contracts I had with my employees, such as they were. They wanted to see my receivables list. They wanted to see, I have a couple of patents on a couple of the products. They wanted to see the patents. And it was sort of like every 2 days I get a phone call, what about this, what about this, what about this? Mm-hmm. And I think probably what they were trying to do was not overwhelm me with information, with requests. So, because I could only handle so much at the time because I was so crazy with other stuff. Mm-hmm. And I guess, and they kept on saying the agreement's coming, and I guess I knew they had a lawyer, and I knew they were working with a lawyer. But the lawyer never came. I didn't want to talk to any lawyers, including theirs, so the lawyer never called me. Everything went through them. So they would be the ones calling me. They'd be the ones sending me requests from them, not from their lawyer. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, they came up with a draft of an agreement. Well, you know what lawyers are like. The frigging thing was 60 pages long. And here I am, I'm trying to run a business, I'm trying to run a house, trying to take care of my wife, and I'm presented with a 60-page document, all in legal jargon. And so I just looked at him and I said, I trust you. If this is the deal and this is what we talked about, then I'm in. And I checked the purchase price, I checked the payment schedule, and I thought, you're paying. And then the other thing was I wanted to know what my terms of employment were. But of course, the agreement was to agree. So that was one of the things that we had to sort out after we signed the agreement. But the signing the actual agreement, it was kind of like I sat there for an hour and I looked at the purchase price and I looked at the payments and asked him, I kind of flipped through, asked him like a few other questions, but I didn't read it in detail. I was tired, I didn't have the focus. So eventually I said, yeah, let's do the deal, and we both signed, and then he took it away.
Anything else you can think of in
Not really.
that period of time?
No, the deal, the agreement had a closing date of the 15th of December.
Yes.
And so I knew that we had, and he said, I'm sorry, there's going to be more stuff. And of course I was concerned because I wanted to know the terms of the employment for me. So we talked a bit about that, and then of course there was a draft employment agreement that came a week later. Again, I cared about how much they were going to pay me, and I cared about whether they could fire me or not. But other than that, I didn't look carefully at the agreement.
All right, so you received the drafts.
Yeah, the draft of my agreement. Like we signed the agreement in October, like mid-October.
Right.
And then I received the draft employment agreement.
After that.
Yeah, after that. And then,
Okay.
and then I don't know, just mountains of paper.
So if we go back to the period of time between the letter of intent and the agreement
Yeah.
actually being signed, is there anything else that you can think of? That,
Other than the business about the receivables? Because that's when the business about the receivables happened, was
Okay.
back, actually I can't even remember, isn't that awful? I can't remember whether it was before or after the letter of intent. I'll see if I can find, I'm sure I've got a copy somewhere of that letter that I wrote to them about the receivables. And I can't remember now whether it was before or after the letter of intent, but I'll get, if you obviously want that information, so I'll find out for you.
all right.
Just a lot of going back and forth on getting information. That's a lot of what happened in that period of time.
Now, when the agreement was signed, were you together with the Duttons at that
Yep.
point in time? And was the lawyer present at
No.
that time?
No, just Duttons and me.
Okay. And where did that meeting take place?
Their office.
In the West Coast?
Yeah.
So you flew out?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long was the meeting?
An hour, maybe an hour and a half.
All right. Alex, you say you were at the meeting with the Duttons, so you had flown out to their office. And who was present in the office?
Just the Duttons and me.
Okay. Did I take it you had received the agreement or a draft of the agreement prior to going out there?
No, I didn't. So told I didn't have time to look at it. I'd come out and I'd sign it.
All right. So you arrive at the meeting,
Yeah.
and Mr. and Mrs. Dutton are there.
Yeah.
You're there.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
No.
Tell me how that developed. How did the meeting develop?
Well, I mean, I walk in and he's got this conference table, and so, you know, he ushers me in, and his wife is sitting there, and there's this big, thick document. And so he said, he asked me to sit down, and I said, sure. And he said, this is it. And I said, is it what we talked about? And he said, yes. And I said, I should probably look at this. And he said, by all means. He said, you can take it with you if you want. I said, no, I won't read it if I just want to know basically it's okay. So he said, well, take some time and look at it now. So I sat there and flipped through and asked a few questions. I said, well, I'd asked because the thing, as I said, is huge. So I said, where's the purchase price? And he said, turn to page, I don't know, 5 or 6, whatever the heck it was. So I did, and there the purchase price was $3 million. And then I said, what about the payment terms? And he said, turn to page 8. And so I turned to page 8, and there are the payment terms. And I said, what else is in here? He said, and he rolled his eyes and said, you know lawyers. And so I kind of flipped through, and I'd see the odd thing, this thing about the lease, and I said, we've taken care of this. He says, yeah, the landlord's going to let us take over the space. And then I flipped to then there was something about the bank loans, and I said, you're going to, the bank loans are okay? He said, yeah. And then there was, I was concerned about a couple of the employees in particular. I wanted to make sure they were all getting the provisions, and there was so he said, I said, where's that? And so he told me where, and I went in, and sure enough, there's the stuff about they're assuming the employees in the same terms and conditions that I had for them. And then there was the agreement. I was concerned about my agreement for me being an employee. Where was that? Well, that was a skit. That was like way back. And so he pointed out where it was. And so I checked, make sure I was getting paid what they say they were going to pay me. and that I had the title and the responsibility that I was going to have. And I don't know, I asked him a few other questions about a few things, but some of those clauses went on for a page and a half, and I didn't have the time or the attention. It's not what I do. So I just said, is there anything in here I should know about? He said, it's all pretty standard. And all that took about an hour.
Okay. Put yourself back in the room, if you can, just for a minute.
Yeah.
And think, is there anything else that you can think of that might
be relevant?
Mm-hmm.
Not really. I mean, he did say to me, you can go to a lawyer if you want, and maybe you should. And I said, you know that I don't have time for this. I just want to sign. And I have to say that I felt pressure. They were sitting there staring at me, waiting for me to ask questions, and I think they were trying to just be helpful. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not the case in retrospect, but at the time that's what I thought. So it was kind of uncomfortable to sit there and be reading it, but I just wanted to get it done and get it over. I'd flown out there. I had to get back. But that's it. No, I mean, I asked some questions and he answered them, and then I signed.
Okay.
And so did they.
Now, two important clauses in that agreement that you found out after the fact related to, one, the guarantee of the receivables.
Yeah.
And secondly, the restrictions on your future employment should you leave the company.
Yeah.
So Alex, there's a couple of paragraphs that were contained in the agreement that you've indicated were a surprise to you and you later found out about them. One related to the guarantee of the accounts receivable.
Yes.
And the other related to the restrictions on your future employment should you leave the company.
Well, I mean, the receivables one, I told you, I did not expect that. In fact, it was totally contrary to what I told them before. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wrote to them and said, I don't know about collection. And when I sat down there and I said, is this what we agreed to? And he said, yes. I didn't bother reading all the fine print. I assumed it would all be there. So that clause was a surprise. The non-competition clause, I didn't give it much thought because I was signing on with these people for life, and I figured I'd be with them for the next 20 years, and it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's nothing unusual about having a non-competition agreement, particularly in our industry where it's all about your client contacts and your knowledge of products and stuff. But I didn't really think about it because I just assumed I'd be working with these people forever.
Had there been any discussion prior to this meeting when the agreement was signed about the restrictive covenant?
No, he talked about a standard employment agreement. And he talked about a standard employment agreement. He didn't talk specifically about the non-competition, no.
Okay.
And I didn't ask about it.
And you didn't read it?
No.
At the time of the
No, but I mean, would I have been surprised to see it there? Probably not. But I didn't give it much thought because I just assumed I was going to be working in this place forever, so it wouldn't matter.
Okay. Now, the paragraph relating to the accounts receivable, that guarantee, there had been some discussion around the accounts receivable.
Yeah.
But what you're telling me is that you at no time understood you would be guaranteeing.
Not at all.
Okay.
Total surprise to me when he pointed out to me in August.
All right. Did you read anything in the agreement at that time? Did you
Not about that. I mean, that's what I consider to be all the fine print. I mean, I was looking at, I want to make sure I was going to get paid. I want to know when I was going to get paid. I want to know when the closing date was. And I had concerns about the lease and the employees. I mean, that was the stuff that I thought of. And I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I wasn't approaching it that way. It was a business deal. I just wanted to get the deal done.
Okay. Had there been many discussions around the receivables prior to this particular date?
There was so much we were talking about. I mean, certainly after I wrote that letter, there was nothing he said that would have told me that he wasn't accepting my statement that the receivables were a problem.
Okay.
So I had no idea from him that he was asking me to guarantee them. There's nothing he said that. I mean, I sent that letter saying receivables are an issue. That's all I did. And he never came back and said, oh, that's going to be a problem.
All right. So certainly from your understanding at the time you signed the agreement. You didn't look at the agreement specifically, you didn't look at the specific clauses, but your understanding was that you were not guaranteeing the accounts receivable.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, our time is almost up, but we really need to get together again.
Yes.
Because it's a very complicated issue. And there are a couple of things that I'd like to look at for you so we can better help you in terms of decisions around what you're going to do.
So what am I supposed to do, and how long is this going to take?
What I'd like you to do, if you could, is to gather all the documentation that you have relating to this matter,
Yeah.
and bring it back when we next meet. I'd like to have the letter of intent. I'd like to have a copy of the letter that you sent with respect to the receivables.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the agreement. And anything else that you might have in terms of documentation, I'd like to have. So if you could get those documents for me.
You know it's like this thick, eh?
That's okay, I understand that. But we'll need to see it, and I'd like to review it. And I'd like to review the specific paragraphs in the agreement which are of concern for you.
Yeah.
And we're going to take some time to review the situation, because you're in a contractual relationship with these people, so that document's a very important one. And we want to take a look at some of the law around restrictive covenants as well, because we want to make sure that, in cases if it's too restrictive, that part of the document could be void altogether. So we want to make sure we're current on that issue as well. So that's what we're going to do. And I'd like to get together in a week if we could. Does that work for you?
No, that's no problem at all.
Okay.
I'll make time. What do I do about going to work?
Well, they haven't said you can't continue to work right now.
Correct.
So how difficult is it for you to go in?
Well, I mean, difficult psychologically. Like, it's really hard because I have nothing to do, and I'm working with all these people over whom I had authority. I don't have that authority anymore. I mean, so it's kind of humiliating. But if I have to go, I have to go. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to lose anything by virtue of not going in if it's going to harm my position. All
right. Well, what I'd suggest, try to maintain the status quo as best you can. If it becomes difficult, call me. We'll talk about what you might do at that point in time.
What if Dutton calls
me? Well, I just try to be a listener, I guess, and ask what he's calling you about. And perhaps if he does call you, if you're not comfortable talking to him about something, or you're concerned about what you might say, why don't you just let him know that you'll have to get back to him, and why don't you call me and we'll talk about it.
Should I tell him that I've been to see you?
No, I don't think he needs to know that at this point.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Now, we'll have to talk about legal fees at some point in time. And
that's why I'm worried about this big stock of documents you got to go through. I'm paying you to go through those.
That's right. So I'm going to estimate it's going to take us, maybe, including our time today, reading the documents, and our next meeting, we're probably going to have about 5 hours involved. And our fees are $225 an hour. So that's the type of cost that you might incur at the beginning. At the end of that period of time, you'll have some idea of what kind of options are available for you, and looking at those options, what are the advantages and disadvantages of moving one way or the other. Mm-hmm. So at the end of that period of time, you'll have a better conception of what the future looks for you.
Okay.
Does that seem reasonable?
That's great.
Okay. So why don't we meet maybe, I don't know, next Wednesday?
That works for me.
Okay. Now, do you have any other questions that you can think of?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, you've told me what I need to know.
All right. That's great, Alex.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.